In this video, I will show how to create a simple report in story reporting on budget outcomes, which can be used both during and after a compensation review cycle. For this video, I will use data from a total compensation template, so we can include both compensation and incentive data in the same query. You could also use two data queries from two different templates and include them both in your story designer. In order to make sure you can use Report Story in your instance, please make sure you have enabled SAP IaaS, Report Story is enabled, and you are permissioned to access compensation data in Report Story. These steps can be found on the customer community and also in the link in this blog. So we'll start this demo in Report Center, where we will go and create a new report story. So we're going to click on the New button and click on the story icon and select. On the right-hand side of the screen in the available data pane, you can see all the data that we have access to. We're going to navigate through to compensation planning. We're going to select this total compensation template, and we're going to pull across the template table into the canvas. From the template table, we're going to link our worksheet, and the system requires us to select one field in this worksheet table. So we'll go through to our column selector and we'll select document ID, which will be the unique identifier for each of the worksheets. From there, we're going to link through to the employee entry table. And there's quite a few fields from the employee entry table that we're going to select. So within the employee entry table, we will select all of our dimensions and raw measures that we want to use in our query. So I'm going to go through and select these. I'll select the country, the department, the division. I'm going to expand the employee section here. And we'll select the first name, last name, and username. I'm going to select GeoZone. We'll use local currency code. We'll select legal entity, pay grade. I think I missed currency conversion rate. Okay, so those are all the fields that I'm looking to select. I'm going to save my query and my story now, just because I know those are all the raw data points that I want to use in this particular report. I will save my story by giving it a name. And then I'm going to have a look at the preview of my story, so the preview of my query. So if I come down here into preview query in the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to see the data that I have selected, and I can just have a look and make sure that data looks correct. Now just note that the order that the data appears is not important. This is just a preview of the query. So that preview looks okay to me. I'll click the Hide Preview button and we'll return to the Query Designer screen. So the next step here is to have a look at creating some custom calculations for my query. Now I am using a local currency centric template, which means all the employee data is stored in the employee's local currency. And when we're reporting on budget, we really need to use one singular functional currency. So I will use the currency conversion rate to create calculated measures to convert those values into one functional currency. Of course, if you are using a functional currency-centric template, some of these steps may not be required. So this column overview screen serves two purposes. The first is that it displays all of the selected columns and identifies for you whether they are measures or dimensions, and also allows you to edit what you want to call those columns. The second purpose it serves is this calculated column field. So if I click over on the calculated column tab, I can create my own custom calculations. So as I'm creating a report on budgeting, I'm going to need to create 3 calculated fields for compensation or salary review and 3 calculated fields for incentive. And those are going to be the total budget in functional currency, the total amount allocated or spent in functional currency, and the variance between the two. So we'll click on this button here to add a new calculated column. And my first calculated column is going to be the compensation budget. So we'll give it an ID, we'll give it a name, and then we'll create the formula here. Now in my particular template, there is a field that calculates the total budget amount per employee. So that's what I'm going to pull into my calculation. Your budget calculation might be different, so just make sure that you're pulling in a field that is appropriate to your calculation. So mine here is from the employee entry table. It's a field called total increased budget amount, which is a custom percentage multiplied by the employee's annual salary, and that is configured in the compensation template. And then I'm going to divide that value by the currency conversion rate to give me the total compensation budget per employee in functional currency. I can click the format button here and it shows me that this is a valid formula. The next one that I'm going to add is the total spend. So again, this might be different depending upon your specific configuration. But for my particular configuration, I know that my total spend is made up of 2 fields. It's made up of the standard total increase field, and it's made up of the standard lump sum field. So I am going to find those 2 fields. Now, you can also just type them in and see the value that you want to select. I have pre-configured these for the purpose of the video, but I'll just show you what this one looks like. So total increase amount plus lump sum. That's going to form my total budget. And then I want to add those 2 values together and divide them by the currency conversion rate. Double check that formula looks okay again, and yes, it's telling me it's a valid formula. Okay, the last one that we're going to create here is our variance. So this is the difference between the total compensation budget and the amount that has been allocated or spent. Okay. And so this value is going to be our total compensation budget that we created, less our total allocation. Again, we'll check the format there. System tells us it's a valid formula, and we'll select OK. Now I'm going to go through and do the exact same process for incentive. Keep in mind, again, your incentive budget might be different than my incentive budget, but the formulas to determine the budget, the allocation, and the variance are exactly the same. So I'll go through that now, and we'll speed up the video through this component. So once those custom calculations are complete, we will again save our query. And once the story is saved again, we can preview it. Make sure those custom calculations are working as we expect them to. And then if they are, we will finish our query and we'll look to move to the second stage of the process, which is actually designing the story. Okay, so this is our query. We'll just have a look here at the calculated columns. They look to be okay to me. All right, so now that we're finished this component, we can hide the preview again, click Finish, and complete our query, and move on to the next stage, which is designing the story. Okay, now that we've finished our query, we can look at actually designing our story. So the first thing that I want to do is actually create a new page here that's going to be a responsive page. And we'll delete page 1, which is just a canvas page. And we've got two sort of swim lanes here. We're going to start with a clean space. So I'm going to remove that one, and I'm going to remove the title that appears here. So we're starting with a clean canvas. Now I find the easiest way to do this when you're building a responsive page is to sort of map out what the design is going to look like before you build it. So whether it's a piece of paper or something in a PowerPoint document or whatnot. And what I'm going to do is actually build the framework of the header here before I build the widget. So we're going to start by adding an image to our report. And I've preloaded this as going to be our company logo. Okay, so got best run company from our demo system, which is the logo, and it's going to exist in the top left-hand corner there. The next thing I want to add to this report is a title. So we'll add a text here. We're going to call it 2022 compensation review spend. It's really small at the minute, so let's navigate over from the builder pane through to the styling pane, and we'll make it a lot bigger. We'll make it bold and we'll center it. I can drag the size of this across the worksheet here as well. Okay, it's actually maybe not quite big enough. A little bit bigger. Okay. The next thing we want to do is add a dynamic date so we can see the effective date of the data that's being presented. So again, we'll click here and we'll add a text widget, and I'm going to type the words effective date, and then we'll use this little icon here and we're going to add a dynamic date. Select the current date. You can see this is effective as of today. And again, we can style this. I might just make it right aligned. And I can make it a little bit bigger if I wanted to. Okay, so this is sort of the header of the report that we're going to create today. Now we can actually start to add some more valuable information onto our report. So the first thing that we're going to add is a chart. The instance will automatically put it at the end. You can just drag and drop it where you'd like it. I'm going to set it there for now. And what we're going to create is an indicator chart of a numeric point. So what this is going to display for us is the total compensation values. So we're going to add some primary measures. And really what we're looking at is the total compensation budget, the total compensation allocation, and the total compensation variance. And we can see those three numbers summed here. Now, I don't really like that there's decimal points showing, so I'm going to go back over to the builder pane and we'll swap over to the styling pane. And down at the bottom here where it says decimal places, we can actually change this to 0 so we don't see any decimal places. I also don't really like the default title that it's given me here, so I'm going to change the default title and we'll just call this compensation budget. And we're going to say in USD, which is our functional currency in this particular circumstance. Okay. And we can modify the size of that if we'd like. We can highlight the title of the chart, and we can change the size of this as well. So maybe we'll make it 24 and bold. Okay, so there's our first widget. Next, we're going to add a pie chart. So again, we'll use the chart icon from the insert menu, and we'll move the chart next to our numeric point. Over here on the builder pane, we're going to select the more menu and we're going to make it a pie chart. Now for a pie chart, we need to have at least one measure. This particular pie chart is just going to be a visual distribution of the budget that's been spent by country. So in that circumstance, our measure is going to be total compensation allocation, and our dimension is going to be country. Okay. and we will see our total compensation allocation split by country. You can change the color palette here if you want something more bright, or you can just leave it with whatever default it comes with. We'll also look to change the header of the particular pie chart. So we're going to call this total compensation spend by country. And we'll make that header bigger size as well. And we'll make it bold. All right, so we now have two widgets. We have our compensation budget in US dollars. We have our total compensation spend by country. And now we're going to add a table to this chart. So I'll select table on the end there. Make this effective date a bit bigger for the canvas. Now by default, when we select a table, the system is going to give us a list table. For this particular report, we're going to make a cross-tab table. And in this cross-tab table, we are again going to use country as the dimension in the row. So we'll add country here. And then we're going to add a couple of measures here. Now, this is our count measure, which I have renamed to head count. And if you want to rename anything, when you select the measure and the little pencil, it'll allow you to rename that. But we want to select a few more measures here as well. So we'll click on the Manage Filter button under the column header. And we are going to add our total compensation budget, our allocation, and our variance. That looks pretty good to me, except for we've got total compensation, allocation, and budget probably in the wrong spots. We probably want those reversed. So we can go back over here, click on the More menu, and we're going to edit the member order. And we'll just put that total compensation budget up at the top. And click Done. We should see these two swap in our table. There we go. Now, if you do have decimals displaying here in your table, you can again remove the decimals. Mine looks okay right now. I do want to set a threshold in this particular table so that I can see if the total compensation variance is under or over budget visually using different colors. Once we have selected the header, there we go, and right click, we'll get this menu and we're going to add a new threshold. So it by default selects total compensation variance as the measure to apply the threshold to. We want to say we're okay or it's green if the value is greater than or equal to 0. And then we'll add another one that says we actually want to make it red if it is less than 0. And you can change the colors of these as well. So if you wanted to select a darker green or if you wanted to select a brighter red, you could do that as well. We're going to click Apply. And we should see our table here update with those threshold values. So in this case, it's an icon showing us those first 3 countries are over the threshold value and the last one is actually is under budget. Now, I don't really like the icons that display here, so we do have some other options. In the styling pane, the default threshold style is symbol. We can change that to colored background or colored values as well. And I think that's a little bit better, so we're going to add those as colored values. I can see visually 3 countries under or over budget, 1 country within budget. So I would also like to see the totals here. So I'm going to select the country measure here and show totals. It's going to show me them up at the top here to start, but if I check this little box here, we can see the total values now appear at the bottom. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that. We'll just change the title again. We'll say total. Total compensation budget. Okay. And again, just double clicking the header, and we'll change the formatting there. Okay, so we've got our 3 widgets. Now, because we added a threshold to total compensation variance in the table, we can also add the same threshold now to our numeric point. So if we click into the numeric point and we go back to the builder pane, we'll see there's a little icon here that's called threshold options that didn't appear previously. So we're going to select that. I'm going to go to show threshold and story defined. And now we'll see the same under and over color coding in our numeric pane here. Now I'm going to create the exact same thing for the incentive component of our report. So I'll create 3 widgets and we'll just show the video in a faster speed or fast forward through while I do that. Okay, so I've built all my widgets. I'm just going to save my story. And the very last thing that we're going to do is add a page filter to this story so that we can edit by whatever dimension we choose. So in this case, we're going to use division. So up at the top here, we're going to add input control. We're going to move that input control over here. Now when we click into it, we're going to select a dimension and we're going to select division. And we've got an option to select which filters we want to include. I'm going to select everything. And then if I grab the corner here and I pull this down, I should be able to see all available dimensions in this particular report. And unchecking one of these will filter everything on the particular report. So I'd like to give my user a little bit of instructions on how to use this filter. So I'm going to add a text widget. Again, let's move it across. And I'm going to just copy some text I had previously prepared, which basically just says, use the checkboxes below to filter on all widgets on the canvas based on division. Okay. So we'll do that. And just to show you what this looks like, if we were to pivot now to the view mode, and we are to uncheck a couple of these divisions, you'll notice that the entire canvas will refresh. Lastly, if we want to include any more information to our users, which I think I do, I can add another text box. We'll pull it down to the bottom. And this time, I'm just going to add a note for my end user to explain that everything that I have put on this chart is in functional currency, which is US dollars. So this may or may not be applicable for your organization. Bigger. Okay, so just saying all values display in the template functional currency US dollars, so it's really clear. We'll save it again, and we'll have a quick look at it. There you have it, a very simple compensation review budget spend report, including both compensation and incentive data.